Thank you. Welcome to day 2. My name is Beth Bernhardt. I am the program chair for the Charleston Conference. We first want to remind you of our code of conduct. We want to thank our conference directors, because without them, we couldn't get this all done. We definitely need a lot of people. It takes a village to put on a conference. And then I want to thank our sponsors again. Yay. Yay. Because without them, we could not have such a great party at the aquarium, food all day long, things like that. So thank you for our sponsors. So we have been in this building for 10 years. I did not realize that until this week when we got here. And 10 years ago, we were approached by Springer Nature with the idea of a scholarship to honor Cynthia Graham. And I want to thank Springer Nature for coming and their support through these years for this award. And now the representative will come and speak.
Thank you, Beth, and good morning, everybody. My name is Carolyn Honor. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Springer Nature, and I'm delighted to be here this morning to present this year's Cynthia Graham Hurd Award. Cynthia Graham Hurd was a librarian for more than 31 years in Charleston public and academic libraries. On June 17th, 2015, her life ended when a lone gunman entered the historic Emmanuel AME Church and killed 9 people during a prayer meeting. She is remembered as a tireless servant of the community who spent her life helping residents, making sure they had every opportunity for an education and personal growth. To honor her legacy, Springer Nature sponsors a librarian to attend Charleston, and this person needs to be creating a project or lead an initiative that's made a positive impact on students, local communities, and/or the library profession. This includes supporting research and learning needs, empowering students, improving educational outcomes, and fostering volunteerism and community outreach. And so I am delighted to announce that this year's recipient of the Cynthia Graham Hurd Award is Ben Sirocco from Rowan University. Thank you, everybody. So Ben, in his current role as scholarly publishing and open research librarian at Rowan University's Cooper Medical School, and he prioritizes health information literacy and leads an initiative called Connected Camden, Public Wi-Fi and Environmental Monitoring at Community Art Spaces. Connected Camden expands free public Wi-Fi and installs air quality sensors at neighborhood-based art and cultural spaces. The project delivers real-time environmental data and connects residents to open, evidence-based health information through a public-facing resource site. It targets areas impacted by high asthma rates, industrial emissions, and digital inequity, aiming to build both environmental health literacy and sustainable access to trustworthy information. Connected Camden really exemplifies the values upheld by the Cynthia Graham Hurd Award and by Cynthia's life of service. Please join me in congratulating Ben again as this year's recipient of the Cynthia Graham Hurd Award.
Thank you very much. I'm deeply honored to receive an award associated with such an impressive person. Cynthia Hurd was a public librarian, a lifelong advocate for access, literacy, and community service right here in Charleston. She believed libraries existed not just to hold knowledge, but to make it reachable, to meet people where they are and to open doors that lead to opportunity and understanding. That commitment feels especially urgent right now, at a time when so many libraries and the values they represent are under extreme pressure. Cynthia's legacy reminds us that defending access to information is not a niche concern. It's the foundation of a democratic society. My own work, supported through a National Library of Medicine grant, draws from those same ideals, connecting people in Camden, New Jersey to technology, health data, and trusted information that can improve their lives. It's community-based work, but it's also part of the same ecosystem that brings us together here in Charleston. Because whether we work in publishing, scholarly communication, or collection development, our efforts all flow from the same belief that information should serve the public good. So my call today to the leaders in this room, in publishing houses, tech, and academic libraries, is to make space for this kind of work. Enable your staff to connect their scholarship and daily responsibilities to service and community impact, even though that may be difficult in today's climate. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for this award. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
It's my pleasure now to introduce Jim O'Donnell and his panel to speak to us today. And Jim will be moderating, and we'll let them get started.
Well, good morning, Charleston. I've just had the news from Minnesota that it's been another quiet year in Lake Wobegon. I'm glad to hear that, glad for them, but it hasn't been all that quiet a year where I hang out, and I suspect that many of you have had similarly lively experiences, let's say, over that time. So our panel has been put together today with the cooperation of the directors of the conference and my colleagues here, of course, to talk about how we're coping, how we're leading, how we're finding success in the middle of disruption, in the middle of challenges to our universities and to our libraries and to our profession. I'm Jim O'Donnell, University Librarian at Arizona State University, where I've been for about 10 years. I'm going to let each of my colleagues first just sort of do name, rank, and serial number. Who you are, where you've been, and about how long you've been in roles. So, Dell first.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dell Hornbuckle. I'm Executive Director of University Libraries at Howard University, and that includes the Undergraduate Library and Founders Library, not the Law Library or the Health Sciences Library.
Hi, good morning. My name is Zan Arch. I'm the Dean of the Portland State University Library, Portland, Oregon. I've been there about a year.
And good morning. I'm Judy Russell, the former Dean of University Libraries at the University of Florida for 18 years. As many of you know, we're a very large R1 public land grant university. I stepped down in July and am now on a research year, not because of the challenges we face. I stayed as long as I did because of many of those challenges.
Okay, thank you, and colleagues, welcome. So the challenges facing higher education and their libraries seem to grow and morph and grow again without stopping. I want to begin by asking each of you to say a little bit about what you think are the biggest issues and perhaps the newest issues you've been facing in the last year or two. And what have you and your colleagues done in response? We're seated in order by size of institution, and we'll go in that order. So Dell, why don't you get us started?
Sure. So Howard is unique, and that'll continue to come up in what I plan to share. So Howard University is appropriated by Congress. So we're kind of beholden to what happens based on the administration in place. So as we speak now with the shutdown, the biggest challenge is our funding. Our funding is on hold, and so that creates tremendous, beyond just we all talk about our budgets, but this is at a whole other level. Secondly, Washington, D.C. is in an interesting place. We're all walking on eggshells, and we're all concerned about at the university the student experience. We send out almost every other week missives from University Communications, helping students navigate walking around the city, making sure they have an ID, being polite, that sort of thing. And it's really impacted their experience being in a very vibrant city with a lot of things to do. So we're paying attention to that and thinking about what can we do in terms of, the library and making sure that they have a good experience while in Washington, D.C. And finally, many of you may know that Howard University regained its R1 status. So I just talked about funding, right? So there's tremendous pressure to live up to that. And for me, at least, I've kind of self-imposed a lot of pressure because I want to make sure that we represent an R1 academic library.
So Portland State is seeing some of the same challenges that many of you are encountering. Budget, changing politics, I would say a decreased understanding of the value of the library. Hopefully some of you agree that's an issue right now. Portland State also is facing challenges with being, and this actually matches well with what Del was saying, both urban and urban serving. So we are in the middle of downtown Portland, and we also have an explicit mission to serve downtown Portland, which has come with challenges. Has a mic drop in that, like, one moment. It comes with some challenges based around perceptions of Portland, which drives enrollment and perceptions of the safety of things like the library space. The pandemic increased in houselessness in our immediate area. The incoming threat of federal troops really in downtown Portland. You've probably heard that, seen the frog suits. And maybe most dramatically, last year, the occupation of the library in Portland State and extensive damage of our space. And so, the results in some ways in terms of response has often been fear. For my team in some cases, because there is the wonder of what do these things mean for us and what that's going to mean for what will happen next. So I'd say one response that I was just thinking about earlier today as well is how that for us drives a lot of focus on mission too, because one way to respond to something like, for example, a major occupation of our space would be to go card access only, shut ourselves off, serve our students and faculty, but with the explicit mission to serve the city, it's been very important to focus on that and focus how we can make ourselves a safe place for campus while welcoming a broader community into the library. So that focus on the university and the library mission within the challenges that come our way has been an important part of how we've been moving forward.
So employee morale has been a very important focus for us, especially reassuring our minority employees and supporting employees who have picked up additional responsibilities due to increased vacancies. Fortunately, the libraries had included gender-neutral bathrooms and lactation rooms in renovations over prior years, so new state guidance restricting transgender use of bathrooms, while unpleasant and disturbing, were not a problem that occurred in many of the older buildings on campus that did not have those alternatives. We've not yet seen significant ICE activity on campus or in Gainesville, but even employees who are U.S. citizens but could be perceived as immigrants are anxious, and many carry their passports or other credentials. All of us have grave concerns for employees, colleagues, students, as well as family and friends. There's very little we can do to assuage those concerns, but it's important to acknowledge them with empathy and to offer what comfort and support we can. While we still have been able to hire well-qualified candidates when we do fill positions, our pools are definitely smaller, and when we contact people to solicit their applications, we hear from some of them that they're unwilling to move to Florida. We find it easier to recruit individuals who already live and work in the South or have done so in the past. Like the others, because we can't control these external factors, open and frequent communication has been an important response. This includes weekly email shout-outs celebrating specific achievements and contributions of library faculty and staff, and well-attended monthly town hall meetings for which we accept anonymous questions to ensure that we're addressing employee questions and concerns as much as possible. It also includes listening empathetically to our employees and users and responding to the best of our ability. We frequently reaffirm that these changes do not change our mission or our values. For example, we were required to update our strategic directions document to eliminate references to DEI, which was reframed as commitment to community, with relatively little change other than replacing the words that were no longer acceptable. If you're interested in looking at that document, you can search UFLIB Strategic Directions.
Yeah, thank you. Arizona State University, as I assume many people know, is vast. We have almost 100,000 degree-seeking students who come to our campuses in Arizona, and another almost 100,000 online degree candidates spread around the world. Everything we do is on a large scale, everything is complicated, and we are in a state with a complicated past and present. On balance, we as institution have been fortunate. We have not been very frequently the target of complaints from outside. There was one flicker of a time when we appeared on a list of 60 institutions that had been accused of anti-Semitic practices. This was followed immediately by, first of all, the concerted action of our Jewish faculty, staff, and student population speaking up for the institution, and by the institution able to remind the world that the Anti-Defamation League has actually given us a very high grade. Right now, it feels as though we've been able to stay below the radar. We are a public, open, and inclusive institution, and we have not had disruption to our existing policies. Where our concerns rise are at the level of the institution. Research funding is under challenge. We are in one of the states with Democratic state attorney generals who filed the lawsuit about indirect cost recovery, and there is at least some irony that it is those states in which institutions are still getting the indirect cost rate that had been agreed, and not other states. But we know we are vulnerable. We have lost grants, and we have seen funding opportunities change, to say the least. We were happy in the library that we were seeing the end of an IMLS grant, and I want to do a shout out to various Washington agencies, including the folks at IMLS, who, as things have happened, have been staffed by professionals who have really tried to do their jobs well and to help us do our jobs. So we were able to slide through to the end of our IMLS grant, but that won't happen again soon. We are an institution that brings in a great many international students. 6,000 students a year, for example, coming to Arizona from India. Those numbers are down only about 10%, but all numbers and percents at ASU are large, and this is an ongoing concern, both for the ability of students to get visas and come into the United States, but also we are watching carefully what happens to the market for American education, whether the enthusiasm will be there from abroad. My suspicion is that it will be. American higher education is a powerful force in the world and a powerful attraction, but obviously it's a zone of concern. So let me turn back to my colleagues and say then, all right, so here are our issues, here are our challenges. What are we doing about it? How are you and your staff holding up? Say a little bit about that, if you can, please. And what have you specifically done in your libraries? And what are you doing to keep the culture functioning as best we can, and to move forward and talk about ways of moving forward? Del?
Again, HBCUs have historically been under-resourced. So honestly, my library staff and Howard staff, we're used to these challenges from what I've experienced being there. And I don't think I shared this. I've been there, it'll be 3 years in April of next year. So we are mission driven, and I'll get into that later. And once I embraced that and really understood what that meant, I realized that we rarely have conversations about all of these challenges because they've always been there on some level. So as library leaders, and I'll just speak for myself, I've really paid attention to how I show up every day. and that's really important to me. Just kind of paying attention to my emotional intelligence and my empathy. And I know we talk about that all the time, but what does that really mean? I make sure I let staff know that I'm paying for this so that they don't have concerns about the budget, but lots of lunches, lots of impromptu breakfasts. I've extended my 2-hour, I do it bi-weekly, just 2-hour open sessions, and people really show up. Just letting them come in and I listen. Are we really listening? There's a lot of anxiety. I've made sure that, at some point, staff and certainly people I put in more leadership roles understand that I'm really kind of, really putting an investment in them so that at some point when I move on, we have leadership in place. And I want to really speak to that. Not that just we're hiring staff in a position, but I want to invest in you so that you stay here and grow with the organization. I'm a big practitioner of situational leadership. I don't think everyone needs the same thing, and it's important to really understand that. So I'll stop there.
I like that, the situational leadership. That makes a lot. So I would say that a couple things to mention of what I've learned, especially in my, again, only 1 year at Portland State so far, is the first thing in taking care of the library team is how we can control the message about the value of library workers and library services. And the example really comes from this occupation, which happened before I started, but a few months before I started. It was really notable that the focus of the media attention, you may have heard about it from anywhere you were, was that the damage to the building, which was extensive, and the damage to the books, or speculating about the damage to the books. But there was significant damage to the workspaces of the people on my team. There was a lot of interruption in service that we were providing to campus, and that didn't really make it out into the media, and that I don't think that felt very good for the library team. And so it really taught me, and again, it's easy for me to say because I wasn't there at the time, but in processing what had happened with, as I took on the leadership role at Portland State, was just how much they needed to have the attention be on what had happened to the services they were providing. It wasn't about a building, it wasn't about the books, and it wasn't about the damage. It really was about the value of the services they were providing and the experience they had in that process. And so an effort to control that message and be talking really about the value of the services we provide rather than the value of a big box full of books was something that I really took as I took on that leadership role. And the second thing, and I think this matches well with what Del was saying, is one thing that I have taken from my work at smaller universities, and something that probably would not be practical for Jim and Judy, is being able to meet with everybody on my team and really understand where they are in a crisis, in some of these slow-moving crises. I had just read an article, actually, which was interesting, Inside Higher Ed, it talked about relational attention. And that was the idea about understanding how people are connecting in the workplace and trying to figure out how to positively impact that. And for me, that's really started with knowing them, knowing everybody who works in the library. And it's about 45, so meeting everybody has been a little bit of a lift right now for me. But for example, one of the opportunities it's given me recently was I met with a fairly junior staff member who has an identity that makes them feel very vulnerable right now in the current political environment. And so I was grateful that they were willing to talk to me about that. And what that told me also was what I could do, first of all, to figure out how to advocate for them outside the library. So I'm in different rooms than they might be in a dean's council, in a leadership meeting, and to talk about what might be happening within our university and who really is feeling vulnerable. And that opportunity was really helpful for me. And the other thing that I took from that was the ability to just look this person in the eye and say, I support you in this current environment, and I will continue to work to make you feel comfortable in this crisis. So I've been really valuing the opportunity as much as I can do, and I think that really helps my team move through the crises that are continuing. So, thank you.
So I think our situations are similar, although in different scales. We continue to adapt to changes in leadership at the university and guidance from and actions of both the state and federal governments, which, as Jim mentioned, the changes in research funding have already resulted in significant budget cuts across the university, with more anticipated. This, in turn, has resulted in significant delays in replacing vacant positions and establishing important new ones. Our librarians are tenured, and we developed procedures and implemented successfully a state-mandated post-tenure review process, but that whole process caused significant anxiety among our faculty. I think on the more positive side, we are definitely an extensive, very large AI campus with one of the largest academic AI computer systems in the United States. And AI is deeply embedded and integrated into the curriculum of every college. We, as the libraries, support AI teaching, learning, and research, but we're also working on AI use for improved library functions, especially metadata generation and remediation of metadata for our very large digital collections. Maybe less significant, but very important for morale, we recently celebrated the centennial of the first freestanding library building on the campus and used that to highlight the contributions of all of our libraries to the mission of the university. We included our first ever 5K run that passed all 6 branches of the Smathers libraries with significant student participation and enthusiasm. Over the summer, we renovated an outdoor space in front of our Humanities and Social Sciences library, providing tables with power and light to expand library seating outdoors even in the evenings. We obviously have a great climate for that in Florida, aside from thunderstorms here and there and extreme heat at occasions. Was immediately extremely popular even during the early fall heat. It also includes a beautiful, realistic 10-foot bronze statue of an alligator that was donated to the libraries and is already attracting a lot of visitors and selfies. Aptly named Focused Attention by the artist, we're messaging focused attention as the key to success in academics and athletics, although this year the Gator football team is not providing us with its usual competition for attention. But I do think that finding those things that we can do that lift the spirits, that engage people in a positive way, has been really a very important part of our strategy, because the limitations on budget have not allowed us to do some of the things that we might otherwise do as initiatives.
Thanks. Yeah, we've had what we're calling a hiring squeeze in the university to reflect more budget anxiety than budget reality. That has constrained us a bit. We have been, however, in the fortunate, and it didn't always seem fortunate, position of having a critical senior vacancy in our leadership team when our great colleague Laurie McAllister left us to go to be director of the University Library at Hofstra. So we were able to concentrate this year on 2 senior hires, and I want to do a shout out to my new colleagues, Terry Reese, who joined us from Ohio State as leader of our digital services and strategies, and Kshetra Powell, who just joined us from University of North Carolina to be AUL for special collections. That was a stroke of good luck. New, brilliant leaders bringing energy and focus to areas that we're feeling a little bit underpowered has been a good, wholesome antidote to some of the anxieties that come in that come into the institution as we go. Arizona State is also distinctive in its understanding of its mission as a public institution. We have a charter of the university that is literally carved in stone at the entrance to all of our campuses. It is a document officially approved only about 15 years ago, but it's something to which everyone in the institution genuinely knows that we can and should manage. It is highly respected and indeed frequently memorized. Arizona State University, it says, is a comprehensive public research university measured not by whom it excludes, but by whom it includes and by how they succeed. And that's the line of the charter that everyone knows by heart, but it goes on, advancing research and discovery of public value, and undertaking fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural health of the communities it serves. Those are good words to live by. There's a slight piece of amusement in it that we said that we measure our success not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include. The I word is still approved for general use, and we are feeling fortunate that no one had carved the D word in stone at the entrance of our campuses. We're imagining what the crisis would have been if we had to have an argument about whether to bring in the stone cutters to rewrite the charter in that kind of way. Our president, Michael Crow, is brilliant in many ways, and that was just one of his many contributions. We live by that, and it is a reference point and a benchmark that we can use in conversation to focus our attention on what is most important about the institution, most important about what we're trying to do in the library in the institution. So one more question, and then we're going to throw the floor open for comments and thoughts. I'll just say here that we're not so much interested in questions, but of course questions are welcome, but in experiences. What have you learned? What has your institution done? What are you trying to do? What can others benefit from hearing of your education in this time? And if you could be thinking of that for a moment while I pass this last question around among my colleagues. So these are challenging times, and you wake up in the morning and it's easy to think about the challenges first of all. But could you think for a moment about something you've done in your institution that has been particularly successful, that's felt right, whether it's your leadership or somebody else that you've worked with, that has taken you forward in a positive way, in spite of all the challenges we're facing in this moment? Yeah.
Well, this is just my opportunity to talk about being mission-driven, and I'll answer that part at the very end. But I want to share that Howard University and HBCUs are mission-driven, and what that really means is that HBCUs and Howard University are focused on creating a supportive environment and providing educational opportunities to Black students. Now, our demographic, it does not just include Black students, but that's our core mission. So the emphasis is on preparing students for community related careers. So whatever the careers, there's still this sort of connection to the community and a sense of purpose rooted in social justice and social responsibility. If you go to our website, if you look at just the core curriculum, it's all there. It's social justice. So that's, again, when we talk about challenges and you think about what happens at an HBCU and the faculty we attract, we face those challenges. So the DEI threat wasn't a threat because we aren't anchored that way. And the students understand that. So that's been the most rewarding part, understanding exactly what that means. The HBCU teaching and research is anchored in all of this. So the library reflects all of this in the collections and our partnerships and in our programming. We're really focused on a cultural pride experience. Our homecomings, it shuts down DC. It's well known, the Howard homecoming, the football rivalries, the mission, the service-oriented mission of the sororities and fraternities are well known, and it extends beyond our students graduating. And what we prepare our students to be ready to face is just what we're talking about. There's a level of confidence. When we talk about Black joy and Black excellence, that's where it's stemming from. So they go out into the world. Yes, they're facing the challenges, the threats are there, but there's a success rate that just comes from that. HBCUs graduate with all that I've described, and most are under-resourced, and Howard is the Mecca, and it's also under-resourced. We graduate 20% of Black students in this country. That includes STEM, students in STEM professions, with all of that, what I've just described. So I just think I didn't really quite understand it because I think we say we're mission driven, but this means something else. And just at being in a leadership role for the last 2.5 years, understanding that and embracing it has made me a much better leader, I believe, because I understand my role on a very different level. I've been able to translate my vision on a very different level because it's so engaged with how the students are experiencing their education at Howard University. So I think that the mission-driven piece is deeply rooted in how my vision has just been kind of distilled in everything that we've been doing. So the example that I'll use is that, I've been focused on this R1, making sure we represent an R1 academic library. Well, this past, the beginning of the fall semester, we launched an innovation hub. And so it's kind of part makerspace and part this data center. We're going to call it the database. Like a database, okay. So, but it's had rave reviews because I was able to connect with all of these other centers and institutes that need a place. They've come to me, Dell, we need a place to just have students go in and look at data from, we have a partnership with Georgetown University on medical humanities. It's looking at all of the data from DC government, DC archives from decades on all sorts of healthcare issues. And students are able to just go in and just crunch that data and look at it and talk about it in a way that you probably wouldn't experience anywhere. So I'm really proud that that's taken off. And because I've really talked about this at that level with my staff, I've gotten more buy-in and just more staff members who are kind of, here goes Dell with the maker space. And they've been excited about being a part of it. And I've been able as a leader to step away and allow them the opportunity to just grow and, you know, seek out other opportunities within this sort of project that we're working on. And I've watched it flourish. So I'm really proud of that.
So I don't have a single initiative to mention about that's exciting right now. We really are in a rebuilding time after the last few years. But one thing that has been important to me in the last year especially, and in some of these times of crisis, is approaching a lot of my work, including, in some cases, budget cuts, as an advocacy process. So that might seem obvious, but we are being given the opportunity, maybe in the budget process, to describe all of our services and what can be streamlined, which, as you know, is a very complicated task. I went to a presentation yesterday that I appreciated that said, academic libraries are a complex organization that upper administration basically doesn't understand. And I really take that to heart, that most of the people, my own supervisor included, don't really know what we're doing for the most part. They're like, that's great, you're doing well, the box full of book thing is working for you. So I think in these crises, there are always opportunities to talk about the nuances of what we actually do, what services we're providing. Like, do they know what our digital initiatives unit does? I guarantee they do not. And so in talking about our services, in talking even about what we might streamline, what we might cut, that's a chance to say what we're actually doing and how we're serving campus in ways that administration probably isn't noticing. So I do think, well, this is not like an exciting initiative. Something that I've been trying to focus on is trying to use the various crises, the various things we're putting out in crises to talk about what we're actually doing, what services we're providing, and how that is done by a suite of expert faculty and staff that should be recognized in that process. So yes, all these crises are their own advocacy opportunities.
So I recently was at a meeting where one of the speakers said, it isn't the challenges that keep me awake at night, they're what get me up and eager to go to work in the morning. And I'm sure you've all heard the expression about never waste a good crisis. A good crisis always includes an opportunity, and I think you've just articulated those opportunities very well. I think what I am most proud about, like you, I mean, I've mentioned several things we've done, but just the energy of our faculty and staff, their engagement, particularly with the students, their desire that the libraries remain a very welcoming place, and the effort that they make in spite of all of the stresses and strains to make sure that we're vibrant and supportive. And I mean, that word welcoming just can't be said enough. We're often a place that becomes kind of a home away from home for the students. A lot of them come to us between classes. A lot of them, interestingly, we have online students who move to Gainesville to have the college experience, and they engage in clubs and other things, everything except bricks and mortar classes, and then the library is their home away from home. So we have that. We have a lot of engagement with our international students. The challenges are very real. It does create stress, but I do think we build energy from the value that we see from the students and the excitement that they have in working with us and the things that they're learning and doing, and similarly with the faculty and the shared engagement with the faculty on teaching and other kinds of initiatives. So I think I would say that the important thing is that whole view of that mission. What are we here to do? We're succeeding in the mission in spite of the challenges, so we can focus on that and take pride in that and not be as disturbed, I guess. I mean, we are going to be disturbed by these kinds of challenges. They're very serious, but not let them thwart us from our primary mission.
I said a couple of minutes ago when talking about our charter that we focus on the cultural and social health of our communities. We've been fortunate to be at just a point with some very welcome support from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation in being able to double down on two absolutely central activities for the ASU Library in these days. Our community-driven archives, led by Nancy Godoy. Nancy is a first-generation college-goer from a farm worker family in Yuma who's now a senior professional librarian. She heads our Chicano Chicano research collection, and she's invented our community-driven archives that are nationally recognized. I love talking about my colleagues, and at the same time, we have the still young leader of the Labriola National American Indian Data Center. That's the slightly bureaucratic name for our indigenous collections. Arizona is a state where, of course, we have many native nations. When you enter the ground floor level of Hayden Library, there is a greeting wall with greetings in 22 Native American languages in Arizona. The Labriola Center is either unique or distinctive for being an indigenous library within the university library, led and staffed primarily by people from indigenous nations themselves. My colleague Alex Soto, still young, the director of the center, is an absolute force of nature. He's from the Tohono O'odham Nation in southern Arizona. We have other staff who are Navajo and Hopi and Apache and come from the Gila River community just outside Phoenix. My joke is that one of my primary jobs is signing approval forms to pay stipends to musicians and poets and historians who are coming to do events at the Labriola Center. There's action all the time. And one of our insights was to give the center space visible and central in the main library, so that it's not simply a place where people primarily interested in indigenous and native matters will come, but where it's on public display and attracts a much wider audience. And we've been lucky then to have the energy and the enthusiasm and the commitment of those colleagues and the communities they bring together in our building to give a lot of people a sense of what's possible, what's healthy, and what supports, again, the health of our communities. Well, we had our list of topics to work our way through. It is now, we've got about 15 minutes left. We have two microphones here. Guyard Hall is famous for being blinding to those who are on stage. We see vague shapes out there somewhere and not much more. But let me invite anyone from the audience who has stories to tell, questions to ask, to come forward. There are microphones here at the crossing aisle down in the front on each side. And wave to us or something when you get there, because we won't necessarily know you're there otherwise. I see movement.
Hi, Heather Staines from Delta Think. Fantastic panel. I was a few minutes late, but I love this theme that's running through about focusing attention on community service, focusing attention on library value, on the university's contributions, the contributions of all sorts of stakeholders. I'm not a librarian, but I interview a lot of librarians, and I know from some of them, depending on where they're located, that they're a little bit worried that too much attention might be focused on them, and so, for maybe not the right reasons, that they might potentially become a target. So I just wonder what tips you might have if someone may be feeling a little bit nervous about trying to focus attention, on how they can embrace that or utilize that in a manner that will be safe for their particular situation.
Thoughts, comments? Dan, you inherited the community that had been given cause for anxiety, I guess.
Hi, Heather, by the way. So I think I spoke earlier a little bit about trying to balance what might be nervousness about, safety concerns, like very real nervousness with what our mission is in wide service. I think we've also been dealing with it in-house about the threat of federal troops landing in Portland and what that might look like in our downtown location, what that might look like inside the library. And so one of the things I was planning on saying that I didn't want to get to, so we get to questions, but what the idea is of preparation, flexible preparation, I guess I would say, is trying to help my team have a sense of control over what's going on through some level of preparation. So if we have people come to the library looking to find somebody, what can we do? Who can we call? Even with the thought that what we have experienced is probably not going to exactly happen the same way next time. So again, like my team has experienced some fear related to the occupation, and I have to say, what happened then will never happen exactly like that again. It was a series of coincidences that happened and had a certain result. So what kernel can we take of that allows us to prepare for a number of different versions? And I think some of that preparation, even just the process of preparing, can bring with it a sense of control, which isn't everything, but does help people feel ready for what might come.
Thank you.
Well, others may think, let me pick up a theme in what Judy said, recruitment challenges. We've certainly had some. Dale or Zan, have you experienced something the same way?
Well, it goes back to the being under-resourced. So, I've talked a lot about how great, our faculty and who we attract. Well, we have a high rate of turnover for that very reason. How do you retain them? So think of my competition. There's American, there's Georgetown, and they have better resources. Buildings, that sort of thing. So, and it makes its way to the library as well. And also, what I was talking about, this sort of larger, quote unquote, succession planning that I've been thinking about, how do we kind of reimagine our org chart so that we're hiring librarians who have new skills, different types of skills? Well, that's difficult to kind of compete to hire them with the salary and live in the DMV, as we call it. So that's a challenge. So it's just a constant, the budget and making sure that my vision is clear that we should be moving in this particular direction now that we're R1, and I don't really have an answer for that.
We've done a few recent hiring processes with, again, some of the same budget challenges that constrain doing as much as we might want to, but I will say that we almost feel some potential advantages in this current time. We're a very explicitly LGBTQ-friendly campus, and hopefully library as well. And so that it does feel sometimes like we might have some advantages in that people feel like they might find a, again, welcoming community that they might not find elsewhere. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm hoping that that's something that will be a positive effect on our ability to recruit.
Certainly, Arizona, we have our challenges for climate, for relative remoteness from most other academic institutions, suspicion about Arizona politics, not all of it well-grounded, and such misfortunes as being a state in which public higher education is not one of the attractions we put in the recruitment package. Let's put it that way. I think it's, again, the emphasis on mission and the emphasis on outreach to folks who can understand what we're doing and buy into what we're offering. I will. Oh yes, sorry. In the blinding light over there.
Hi, I'm Athena Hepner at the University of Central Florida, and I've been pondering whether to ask this question at all, but it sometimes feels like we're that little dog sitting in the room that's on fire and saying this is fine, because we have a very important role we're playing in academia and specifically in libraries, and we want to keep doing it and serving people. But it also feels like sometimes it's the moment where there's a call to respond and do something meaningful to try and change the direction or the course of politics in our states or in the United States. And I wonder if you as deans have given that thought. Where is that threshold? What is the line at which you say we need to act or do something And even though we've seen universities face repercussions for having made some sort of statement or held a line, what is your thinking on that, if you have any thinking that you can share? Thank you.
Looked at me, okay. You may recall that famous alum, former Vice President Kamala Harris, hosted her election night. It was the election night at Howard University. Well, she didn't win, obviously, but we were really nervous. The campus was really nervous. What exactly will that mean? And with the current administration, and so that's one example. There were multitudes of threats, bomb threats, out a number of HBCUs. So, and I don't think that's been quite resolved, but they were, throughout the whole region of HBCUs. And HBCUs typically, there are none west of the Mississippi, quote unquote. So this is all kind of on the East Coast. So I just think we kind of carry on. And again, being anchored, and that's why I talked about the mission driven, because it's so anchored into what we do, and the threat has always been there. And so you're right, I can't speak to every faculty member, every library director, how they individually manage this or talk about it with their staff, but we're going to press on, and our collection is what it is. Students are planning sort of a photo exhibition of Asada Shakur. So if you know her, so this may be something really controversial, but it's what we do. So we express all of this and we respond to this with our collections. And I would invite you to take a look at Moreland Spingarn. It's larger than Schaumburg in New York City, but it's just a complete landscape of the African American experience. And we pull from those collections, and it's some parts are just very passive and neutral, and other parts are quite controversial. And it's a part of who we are. And I think that's kind of our response. We're going to do what we're going to do because that's what we're anchored in. And the social justice piece, you'll have to get over it. It's what we do. And those are the books we buy. Really, those are the databases that we buy. And so I'm saying that because I'm really proud of that. But there's another part of it where we're very vulnerable. And I started talking about that where we're wondering about our funding. The congressional appropriation funding. Oh, you didn't want to?
Go ahead. So my colleague from Florida is correctly addressing some of the specific challenges, and I think it is, as you say, it can happen really at any institution. We all have our vulnerabilities. We in particular, I guess, have the benefit at UF that we're in a smaller city, and that gives us a different level of protection than being in a large urban area does, as far as maybe the attention, but we also have a very large, very wide open campus that there are no gates, there are very few fences, it's just the buildings are not locked. We interviewed somebody a number of years ago, came from a private university and couldn't get over the fact that he could walk into any of our libraries without ever showing an ID or being screened in any way. And it's like, we say, not in the traditional sense of a public library, but in many ways we are a public library, and we welcome visitors and community members without barriers. So it is a case, I think, of alertness and preparedness and working with our police force and other people on the campus to prepare us, but also to be on standby if something should occur. We've been relatively fortunate and hope that that continues.
Yeah, listening to Del particularly, I'm struck by a theme running through this, which is that we as leaders will obviously share the anxieties of our colleagues, but have some responsibility to manage that anxiety to a rational direction, without, on the other hand, dipping into toxic optimism and just saying to everybody, yeah, sure, everything's going to be just fine. Really, things could be a whole lot worse, or what have you. I'm thinking of, let me not politicize this, but there are various things that can happen in Arizona. We have two student groups on campus that are at some war with each other and have strong political opinions and engage in some acting out. I'm proud of Arizona State University students that when the most toxic of those actings out is deployed on campus, it's generally, in fact, drowned out by people more reasonable. But I don't have a magic solution, but it certainly is our job, it's the job of many people in this room, to think of ways to keep the organization moving forward, rational about the things to be anxious about, realistic about just how optimistic we can be, but still determined to move forward in what are otherwise challenging times. Are we? Well, there are more challenges out there waiting for all of us, and I am also advised by Beth that there are sessions starting at 10:15, and they are all in this building, so you don't need the Francis Marion sprint that you sometimes do. Let me close then by thanking my colleagues here. It's been a pleasure to work with through this. To thank you all for joining us, and to wish you the very best in the next level of excellence and persistence that we will all take part in. Thank you.